Good morning to everybody. If you don't know me, I'm Julia Amies, and I am a member of the Endowment Board, which is 7 parishioners who guide the fund. Today is Legacy Sunday, and we want to get out some publicity about the Endowment Fund and what it does for St. Timothy's. And so you all have a flyer. It has some basic information and some more detail than maybe we'll touch on this morning. But in 1989, a fund was established with an initial contribution here at St. Timothy's, and our endowment fund was born. Any contributions that are directed toward the endowment fund do not go to the general fund. They are invested. Hopefully they grow. And as they grow, a percentage of those funds, hopefully never the principal, is donated to the general fund to support the ministries of St. Timothy's. And in a good year, those earnings exceed what we expend to the general fund. And in a bad year, the limits on our contribution to the general fund assure that the fund stays healthy for the future. And we have a spending policy that limits us to 4% to 5% of the fund. And we do not take the fund, we do not take a photograph of a moment. That is 4% to 5% of a rolling average over 12 quarters. So that insulates us against, fluctuations in the market or in our investments, so that we don't have a huge contribution one year and a tiny little contribution the next year if the market goes down. The goal, of course, is to protect the principal and grow it. The secondary goal, or maybe the primary goal from your point of view, is to make certain that there is a base, a financial base, that protects St. Timothy's also against ups and downs, such as we've seen the last 2 years with no in-person worship. So there are lots of ways that the endowment fund can increase. One way is through donations, and that's where we all come in. The endowment fund is composed of donations that are made in a number of ways, but they can be made during life. You can give a gift to the endowment fund anytime. And it is also increased by bequests at death. There are many vehicles, and I invite you to look here on, let's see. In the center of the little flyer that you have, it says ways to give, and it makes some suggestions of vehicles that you can use. You can use life insurance. You can use some of money that is invested. You can use cash. You can use appreciated stock. So why do we support the endowment fund, and why do we need an endowment fund? I mentioned insulating us against the ups and downs of life that happen. But the main reason is intent. If you intend, if St. Timothy's occupies an important place in your life, and if it has meant much to you and you want to be sure that it's there for your children and for those coming after you, then a gift to the endowment fund is a wonderful way to help ensure that St. Timothy's is around for a long time. And so intent is the first thing. As a retired CPA, I always have to insert this. Typically, there are tax advantages to a contribution to any nonprofit organization. They can be tax advantages for income tax purposes. They might be tax advantages for estate tax purposes. Everybody's situation is different. So I can speak in general terms, but I cannot speak specifically. You need to check with your tax professional, with your attorney, if you're trying to do it as a bequest, and figure out what's best for you. The next thing I want to just touch on is what the endowment fund is not. When a contribution is made to the endowment fund, it does not go to the general fund of the church, to the general operating fund. It is set aside and invested for growth and future support of the church. It does not go into church reserves. We have reserves for a leaky roof and things like that. It doesn't go there. It's not a piggy bank for emergencies. And it is also not a discretionary fund. There are contributions that are made to St. Timothy's that are restricted to a certain purpose or something like that. And they're held in the general fund as discretionary funds, and the vestry or the clergy can call on those funds for certain things, but the endowment fund is not any of those things. It can go, a gift to the endowment fund can be restricted by the donor to a specific purpose. So if you were interested in the building, it might. But typically the funds that come from the endowment fund into the general fund come as general fund contributions, and the budget committee and the vestry who determine how the money is spent out of the general fund would determine what it goes to. Brooke?
I would answer that slightly differently. I mean, if there was something on the books of a building that needed some work or something addition, and it went to the vestry could come to the endowment board and say, this is what we want to do. Can you help us in something like that? We do work back and forth.
But the endowment is specifically for, I guess I'm missing something here.
For growth.
For growth. Okay.
Yes.
And the endowment fund is to support Timothy's for years to come, because if it operates as it should and as it typically does, the principle of that endowment fund never goes away. We just contribute out of earnings and growth. And so that pool of invested money is always there as a little extra. I wanted to use a number this morning, and I was checking with Brooke so that I had it right. In 2015, our 4% contribution from the endowment fund to the general budget was $8,700. Through growth and additional contributions, our contribution this year was, I have to add here, 23,000, say 23,500, and another 3,500 from a restricted endowment. And so $27,000. That's what an endowment fund can do for St. Timothy's. Yeah. In coordination with the endowment fund, we do have a legacy society, and that's what we're celebrating today. A legacy society is anyone who has made a gift during their lifetime to the endowment fund. You can make a gift to the endowment fund anytime. Or those who have notified us that they have a planned bequest in the future that will come to the endowment fund are automatically members of the Legacy Society, and we celebrate those people today. Do you have to be a member of the Legacy Society? Absolutely not. We have those who have contributed to the endowment fund and have requested that they be anonymous, and we honor that request. It's a private thing for them, and they want to keep it that way. So they are anonymous members, but we never broadcast their name or anything like that. It is personal. There's no minimum gift. Some of you remember, oh, maybe it's been 5 years ago now, when we had the Episcopal Relief and Development drives to buy flocks of chickens and herds of goats. And you remember a flock of chickens was $130 and a goat cost $80. Well, who can afford that out of their grocery budget? And we contributed little bits, but together we bought something like 27 goats and I can't remember how many flocks of chickens. The endowment fund works the same way. A gift doesn't have to be big. It can be $100 here and there as you get it. It can be $1,000 here and there as you get it. It can be a big bequest. It can be a life insurance policy. It can be some appreciated stock. But together, what we can do is amazing. As exhibited by 8,700 versus 27,000. Together, we can do great things. So there's no minimum gift. There's no formal commitment that you need to make unless you want to be a member of the Legacy Society. Then you have to let us know because otherwise we don't know. And if you decide to change your mind and modify your commitment, you can do that. You don't have to let us know because we don't need to know the amount. We just need to know if you want to be a member of the Legacy Society, we just know that you have made that commitment. But every little bit pools together with everyone else's little bit, and pretty soon you have a big bit that makes a huge difference. So why join? I've touched on this already. The main thing is the intent that you want St. Timothy's to go on forever. Another reason may be that you want to support a specific ministry. And as a donor, you can restrict your endowment fund contribution to support a specific area of the church rather than the general budget if you wish to do that. And the other reason is you believe in our future, St. Timothy's future. And so, Brooke, I invite you now. I didn't mention you are on camera with Zoom. So if you kind of stay around the podium here, that would be helpful. All right. Brooke Forsyth.
Thank you, Julia. I'm Brooke Forsyth and have been on the endowment board for a number of years and tell you a little bit about what I have done. I am a member of the Legacy Society. And first of all, Ashley, thank you for these wonderful slides. Ashley did the slides and she's done the publicity in the Tim's Times. A number of years ago, my wife and I were attending another church and there was a meeting similar to this talking about their foundation. And we made a verbal commitment at that point that yes, we would do something with our trust fund. Well, it was verbal and time passed and naturally, like other people, we didn't act on that. Close to the time when we knew that her time in life was short, we did contact our attorney and modified our trust to include that church in our final plans. And that was executed shortly before she passed in 2013. In 2016, I made the move from that church to St. Tim's. And in 2017, I contacted my attorney and modified the trust at that point to remove that specific church and notified them and included St. Tim's in my estate planning. That was done in 2017. Well, now being on the board for a number of years and president, I've learned a lot about the endowment. And the endowment currently is made up of two different funds. The general fund, which at the close of March was a little over $662,000. That was our total combined funds. The general fund was $588,000. And within the endowment, we have what's called a designated fund. A number of years ago, an anonymous donor gave a large amount of money for landscaping of the church. And that for a long time was commingled, which it should not have been. And I guess around 2018 or 19, we were able to separate that out and create a separate designated fund for landscaping. And the balance of that at the end of March was a little over $74,000, almost $75,000. Last year, with the help of Rick Sharp and Hank Connard, we developed a total landscape policy, how to manage that fund. And it was agreed upon that the annual budget for that would be $3,500. So I just told you the main fund in March was about $588,000. And Julia's told you what we contribute to the church on a quarterly basis. That's $5,862. So April 1st, that $5,800 was withdrawn from the main fund and sent to the church. We also do on April 1st every year, $3,500 for the landscape fund. So that was withdrawn. Yes, we do have a volatile market right now, but we do have an investment advisor, Mariner Wealth Advisors. We selected those in 2017 or 18, Gary. Three of us at that point, and that was the first year that I was president of the board, I think. Jenny Campbell, Gary Stansberry, myself, and Marvin sat down to review several investment advisors and selected Mariner to be our advisor, and they've done a wonderful job for us. Now, let me bring you to where I am today. I've done a lot of thinking over the past year or so of exactly what I wanted to do. And last fall, I sat down with my attorney and started to work on revising my trust, which was my trust, my will, all of my documents. And those documents were signed on February the 10th. And I sat down with Mother Liz. And as most of you know, music is a big part of my life. So at this point, my trust now, my entire estate goes to St. Tim's. Upon my passing, all of my estate will go to St. Tim's. And within that, I have created a new, or will create a new music endowment. So I hope that at this point that will grow. Our wealth advisors, Mariner, has all of the documents. If anybody wants to contribute to that now and open that fund, they can. But at my passing, my entire estate will be liquidated and go into that designated fund. I am currently working on a spending policy for it. I have not finalized that yet, but it will be similar to the main fund. And I hope at this point that I am planting a seed and creating a legacy. That's my story. Thank you. And I will say, it's been my privilege to work with the endowment committee and be president for the past couple of years. Gary's been on the board, Ashley's on the board now, Julia's on the board, Cletus is on the board. Shannon here. Oh, there's Shannon. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. But we've got a wonderful group. They're great to work with. Thank you.
Thank you.
So how do I support the endowment fund? You can make a contribution in your lifetime of cash or securities. You can include St. Timothy's as a beneficiary in a trust and a will, part of your IRA, a life insurance policy. As always, discuss your plans with your financial advisors because everybody's situation is unique. I hear sometimes in visiting with people, in my last life when I had a career, I was a certified estate planner. So the question I hear from people is, well, if I want to give $25,000 to St. Timothy's Endowment Fund, how do I know there's going to be enough money in my estate to do that? I mean, I don't want to cheat my kids or my spouse or whatever. The way to get around that is to designate a percentage. So let's say we'll use 25,000 as a round number. We'll say that you want to gift 25,000 upon your death, when you're done spending, to St. Timothy's Endowment Fund. And that represents 10% of your estate. We'll think of it as a tithe. Then instead of saying in your will, I want 25,000 to go to St. Timothy's Endowment Fund, say, I want to tithe 10% of my estate to St. Timothy's Endowment Fund. You can do that. Then if your estate goes down, it's just that percentage, 10%. If it goes up, it might be a little more than 25,000, but you're not going to take away from those you love and care about and want to take care of after your passing. So you can always use a percentage. It doesn't have to be a number, or it can be a specific asset that you think your heirs can do without. Or it might be an IRA, which is going to cost your heirs some income tax. And if you give it to a nonprofit, it won't cost them income tax. How do I join? Well, that's the easiest thing in the world. Make a contribution during life of any amount. That's one way. Another way is to notify that you have made plans in your will or trust or whatever. The other thing I want to point out to you is over here, and I'm sorry, I'm leaving the camera just a moment. We're having a luncheon on the 21st of May, and it's a fact-finding luncheon. And so, I'm sorry, I have strict orders to come back here so you can see me. We are having a luncheon on May 21st to honor current Legacy Society members, but also it's a fact-finding luncheon. So if you're curious and you want to know more, we invite you to come to the luncheon. And this is a sign-up sheet. And you can put your name and phone number and we'll contact you and you can come to the luncheon and you can learn more information. If a luncheon isn't your bag, or if you're busy that day, it's a Saturday at noon and you can't come, then on the left side of the piano are little forms that you can put your name and number, and you can check a box that says, I can't come, but I want to know more. And someone will contact you and give you more information, answer any questions that you might have. We, as the Endowment Board, are here to serve you and St. Timothy's. And if you have questions, we'll try to answer them. If we can't answer them, we'll find somebody who can. And so I invite you to join us on May 21st. We would love it if you were there. And there's no obligation. Just come and find out more. And this ends a presentation, I think. I have mentioned joining us at the luncheon. I'm going to leave this up. Do the people on Zoom see this information, Amy? So there's the information on the luncheon. And again, sign up sheet. I'm going to have it on the piano here. Those of you at home, you can call the office and give them your name. This sign up sheet will also be in the gathering space for the next couple of weeks. The deadline for signing up is May 9th. Thank you. May 9th.
Do we have time for any questions?
What?
Any questions?
Yeah, and at this point, we'll entertain questions.
Okay, so a check would have to be made the way you have it in the red here, right?
Yes, it does need to be designated.
It doesn't say, you can't do St. Tim's Episcopal Church and then that line say.
The question was, does the gift have to be designated to the endowment fund? Yes, it does. And you'll see that several places on the bottom of the flyer in red, so you notice. It must be Endowment Fund of St. Timothy's Episcopal Church. Otherwise, a gift that you make, even if it's through your will, if it doesn't designate endowment fund, it does go to the general fund. Yes.
So if I were writing a check to the endowment fund, could I write it to St. Timothy's and write endowment in the memo?
You absolutely could do that. The question is whether you could write a check just to St. Timothy's Church and put endowment fund in the memo section of your check. You could.
Oh, you can do that.
Yeah, and the way that works, that goes into the treasury, and at the end of the quarter, they write a check to us for anything that comes in. Also, proceeds from the sale of columbariums comes into the endowment fund. So if someone buys a niche in the columbarium, that $2,200 flows into to us also.
Amy, was that picked up by the Zoom? Okay. Yes.
On a slightly different note, the French Revolution was partly caused by what was then la main morte. And la main morte was basically funds that were bequeathed over the centuries to the church and ended up in a big black hole and never could be recuperated or repurposed for the needs at the time people realized. And there were millions of French people at that time that looked at the church own needs and their own poverties, and it said enough, and the rest is history. So my question is, what is written in the laws, the bylaws of our endowment fund to wrap it up, to finish it
So
for whatever reason, at whatever time in 3 centuries from now?
let me repeat the question for the Zoom viewers. The question is, if St. Timothy's would go away sometime in the future, what happens to these endowment funds? I'm not an expert on the French Revolution, but I can see it was a problem. I don't know whether that's in the trust
Yes.
fund or not, but it seems to me that it would go to another Episcopal church in the area.
Well, there are several provisions in the bylaws. If St. Timothy's was to merge with another church, that fund would be in the merger. If in the future, unfortunately, St. Timothy's somehow would dissolve, and I don't know the exact language, but it would go to Coedno, which is a corporation for the Episcopal Diocese of Missouri.
Which is also an endowment.
Correct.
Fund.
Well, it would flow into one of their funds. Coedno is the business structure for the endowment, commonly known as Diocesan Council, which I served 2 terms on Diocesan Council. So if the church was dissolved totally, the assets of the church would, which is a separate corporation. We are a separate corporation
Yes.
from the church. And Gary, you can correct me because he's the legal expert. But it would flow into Coedno.
So for those on Zoom, there is a provision for that, and that fund does not fall in a black hole. It continues to serve the Episcopal Church should St. Timothy's go away.
I'm here to testify, it's not going away anytime soon.
Mother Liz says we're sticking around.
Somebody wants to see, the bottom line, you know, the spreadsheet. What we have, I mean, that's open for viewing.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And we're going to, the endowment board over time has not always disseminated that information
Well, yeah.
just through lack of doing so. And we're going to start reporting on like a quarterly basis or
Like a
something.
budget thing for, you know.
Yeah.
I know some, you know.
It is in the annual.
It is in your annual report every year in January. Yes, it is. And it has been historically. Mother Liz?
No, I was gonna
Oh, okay.
say that in the annual report, they always make a report, but I
Yeah.
know there's movement to doing it more frequently.
Louise?
The other thing too is the endowment is its own 501(c)(3), so it doesn't file a Form 990 every year, and that is public. And one side to look at it, or you could ask the endowment board members.
Louise added that we are a separate corporation. We have a 501(c)(3) designation, which means we are a nonprofit. And we are required to file our own tax return every year, which brings up another subject. Most charities, many charities, divert a huge amount from their funds for administrative purposes. They pay an administrator, they pay outside people to solicit donations, and they keep 15 or 20% of the donations. Your endowment board is run by a group of volunteer parishioners who are knowledgeable. We have several CPAs on the board right now. We've had attorneys. Cletus is on the board and he just retired from the Federal Reserve Bank. Larry Thomas, same thing, same kind of background, investment. Shannon is a CPA and background in investing now and pursuing additional credentials in that area. So our administrative costs are nil. We must pay a CPA each year to do a tax return. This year that cost us $600. For many years, we had a board member who did it, but he has since retired. So now we have to pay for it, and it's like $600, or at least that's what it is this year. And once in a blue moon, we have something like the Legacy Luncheon to honor those of you who have supported our effort to give St. Tim's a solid financial base for the future. We're on a strict budget for that. And it's not going to be anything extravagant, but we like to do that periodically. So I think our operating budget, our administrative expenses last year were under 1,000. Would that be correct? Under $1,000, maybe under 500.
Yeah, nothing.
They were nothing last year because we got our tax return done for nothing last year. So this year, our administrative costs are going to be $680 or whatever the tax return costs. And of course, we don't pay tax because we're a nonprofit. And whatever the luncheon will cost us. So our expenses are nil. When you make a contribution to the endowment fund, you can be assured that 99.5% of it is going to go for the purpose that you intended. There is no deduction from it. Any other questions? Oh,
Our representative from Mariner Wealth, Bob Horton, will be here for luncheon.
yes, our Mariner people will be there at the luncheon, and they'll have additional information from their point of view that we don't provide. So any other questions? It has been an absolute delight to share this information with you. It's exciting that St. Tim's has an endowment fund. It's exciting that people believe in St. Timothy's future because it's meant a lot to me. It means a lot to you. That's why you're here. And it's an important thing to know. And we'll be better communicators in the future, Joanne, and that information will be sent out quarterly, I think, in Tim's Times or something. There are ways, or at the Angler, we can let you know additional information as we go. So goodbye to those of you on Zoom, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.